Maybe today you woke up without strength, with a tired mind and a heavy heart, wondering how long you will hold out. Anxiety and fear insist on knocking on the door early in the morning, bringing negative thoughts that drain inner peace even before the day begins. But let me tell you something important. If you are here now, this is not by chance. It is a clear sign that there is still purpose, care, and direction from God over your life. Getting up doesn't always mean having energy. Sometimes it just means deciding not to give up. And it is exactly at this point that starting over with God makes all the difference. When you choose to take care of your mind, trust God, and allow Him to guide your thoughts, something begins to change inside. Faith and motivation take the place of anguish, and the message of Christian reflection is no longer just beautiful words but daily sustenance. In this minute of reflection, you will understand how to shield your mind, overcome bad thoughts, and find rest in God even on difficult days. It's not about denying problems, but about learning to face them with spiritual strength, emotional control, and a renewed Christian mindset. If you need direction, a fresh start, or just some peace today, stay with me. This message may be exactly the push you needed to get up and not give up. To start again every day with God is to understand that each morning is loaded with new mercy. No matter how the night went, yesterday's mistakes, or accumulated weariness, God always offers a new beginning. When you decide to trust God right when you wake up, something adjusts inside. The mind slows down, the heart aligns, and faith and motivation begin to take the place of anxiety and fear. Starting over with God is not forgetting reality. It is facing it with a different attitude. Many people think that starting over requires total emotional strength, but the truth is that it starts with small acts. A simple prayer while still in bed, a sincere thanks, a request for direction are already forms of mind care and spiritual care. These gestures help shield the mind against negative thoughts that arise early on. Gradually, you notice the transformation of the mind happening in a natural way. This is how the Christian mentality is being built day after day. When the new beginning becomes daily, the weight of the past loses authority over you. God doesn't work with labels, He works with processes. Each new day is an opportunity for renewal of the mind and rest in God, even in the midst of struggles. This practice strengthens faith for difficult days and brings inner peace that does not depend on circumstances. And without realizing it, you begin to experience a new beginning that is not only external, but deeply internal. Taking care of the mind is not a luxury, it is a spiritual necessity. Many people pray, fast, seek God, but neglect the thoughts they feed every day. When you understand that mindfulness is part of your relationship with God, everything changes. Negative thoughts are not only uncomfortable, they weaken faith and rob you of inner peace. Therefore, shielding the mind is an act of divine wisdom and self-love. The mind works as a gateway. What you allow to enter begins to gain space. If you spend all day consuming bad news, toxic talk, and content that generates fear, it's not strange to feel anxiety and fear at the end of the day. A simple step to get started is to replace some of that consumption with daily Bible reflection or uplifting reading. Books like The Battle of the Mind by Joyce Meyer help a lot in this process of mind renewal. Small exchanges generate great results. When you take care of the mind, you also take care of the emotions and the spirit. This brings emotional control and strengthens the ability to trust God, even when everything seems confusing. The transformation of the mind happens gradually, like someone who tidies up a house one room at a time. And the more organized the mind becomes, the more room there is for inner peace and rest in God. This daily care prepares the ground for the next challenges that will arise. There are falls that are not visible, but hurt more than any physical fall. They are internal, emotional, and spiritual stumbling blocks that make the person think that they no longer have the strength to get up. But daily biblical reflection reminds us, in Psalm 3:7-23-24, that the Lord establishes the steps of the righteous and sustains him when he falls. This changes everything because it takes the burden of self-sufficiency and puts the focus on God's constant care. Falling is not the end when you trust in God. Many people live in guilt over past mistakes, feeding negative thoughts that say God has given up on them. But the Word shows the opposite. God doesn't just see the fall, He stretches out His hand. This understanding strengthens faith for difficult days and brings inner peace to the weary heart. When you accept that God is still sustaining you, anxiety and fear begin to lose strength. The new beginning with God is born exactly at this point. Getting up with God's help doesn't mean you'll never stumble again, but you won't walk alone. This process generates a transformation of the mind and a more mature Christian mindset. Gradually, you learn to overcome bad thoughts that try to define you by falling. Spiritual strength grows when you understand that God does not abandon you on the ground. And this prepares the heart to see the next step with more confidence. Daily gratitude is one of the most powerful keys to emotional and spiritual balance. When you wake up and give thanks for the new day, even without understanding everything, something reorganizes itself inside you. The mind stops focusing only on what is missing and begins to perceive God's care in the details. This simple habit helps shield the mind against negative thoughts first thing in the morning. Gratitude does not change the reality from the outside, but it profoundly transforms the one from within. Many people think that you can only be thankful when everything is going well, but faith teaches the opposite. Giving thanks in the midst of struggles is an exercise in trusting in God and resting in Him. A simple practice is to mentally list 3 things you're grateful for before you get out of bed. This exercise strengthens emotional control and reduces anxiety and fear throughout the day. Over time, inner peace becomes more constant. When gratitude becomes routine, the Christian mentality begins to renew itself naturally. You start to see the present as a gift and not as a weight to be carried. This look transforms the way you react to challenges and fuels spiritual strength. Gratitude makes room for the transformation of the mind and prepares the heart for the next learning. And that connects perfectly with the next point that we're going to explore. One of the greatest deceptions of the mind is to believe that the past has power over what is yet to happen. Old mistakes, bad decisions, and damn words often fuel negative thoughts that try to paralyze you. But when you choose to start over with God, you learn that He works with redemption, not condemnation. This truth brings inner peace and relieves the emotional weight that many people carry in silence. The past can teach you, but it doesn't govern your life. Anxiety and fear arise when the mind insists on repeating old stories as if they were prophecies. That's where mind care combined with faith and motivation comes in. A practical exercise is to interrupt automatic thoughts with a biblical truth or a short prayer. Gradually, you begin to overcome bad thoughts and develop a healthier Christian mindset. This is mind transformation happening in practice. When you understand that God does new things every day, the future is no longer threatening. Trusting God does not erase what has passed, but it redefines the meaning of what has passed. This change strengthens spiritual strength and renews hope for difficult days. The renewal of the mind happens when you let go of what is left behind and embrace what God is yet to build. And this opens up space to see obstacles in a totally different way. Not every obstacle appears to stop you. Many come up to teach you something that would only be learned along the way. When you look at difficulties only as problems, the mind is filled with anxiety and fear. But as you trust God, you begin to see challenges as instruments of spiritual growth. This change in perspective is, in itself, a transformation of the mind. God does not waste pain, He works through it. Often, the obstacle reveals areas of the mind that need care. Impatience, insecurity, and negative thoughts often surface in these moments. One practical step is to prayerfully ask, "What does the Lord want to teach me from this?" This simple question helps to shield the mind and strengthens emotional control. Gradually, faith and motivation replace despair. When you accept that God can use even the hard days, spiritual strength grows. The problem is no longer an enemy and becomes a training. This Christian mindset brings inner peace even in the midst of pressure. Trusting God in these moments prepares the heart to win bigger battles. And this leads us directly to a very common type of obstacle: those that arise within the mind itself. There are giants who do not appear before the eyes, but make a huge noise inside the mind. Fear, anxiety, and negative thoughts often grow when they are not faced. They steal inner peace, weaken faith, and make small situations seem impossible. Therefore, learning to recognize these mental giants is an essential part of mind care. Ignoring it doesn't solve it, but facing God changes everything. Anxiety and fear often lie, saying that the worst will always happen. These thoughts repeat themselves so much that they seem like absolute truths. A practical step is to name what you are feeling and take it to God in prayer without filter. This exercise helps to shield the mind and strengthens emotional control. Gradually, you learn to overcome bad thoughts before they dominate the day. When faith enters the scene, the giants begin to lose size. Not because the problems disappear, but because the spiritual strength grows. Developing a Christian mindset means not accepting everything the mind thinks is truth. The transformation of the mind happens when you choose to trust God even with your heart racing. And this choice sets the stage for understanding how faith plays out in internal battles. Faith does not automatically eliminate internal conflicts, but it completely changes the way you face them. Instead of fighting anxiety and fear alone, you learn to lean your heart on God. This posture brings inner peace even when the mind insists on creating bad scenarios. Faith and motivation become an anchor in unstable days. This is how the spiritual force begins to manifest. Many people believe that having faith is never doubting, but this is not true. Faith is about continuing to trust even when negative thoughts appear. A practical exercise is to mentally respond to concerns with a biblical promise or a phrase of trust in God. This helps to shield the mind and promotes emotional control. Over time, you begin to notice the transformation of the mind taking place. When faith starts to be used as a daily tool, the internal battles lose intensity. The Christian mentality is strengthened and the heart learns to rest in God. This constant practice develops emotional and spiritual resistance. Overcoming bad thoughts is no longer something rare and becomes part of the routine. And this leads us to understand how the mind reacts to what is planted in it every day. The mind works like a garden. Everything that is planted sooner or later grows. When you nurture negative thoughts, they take deep roots and take space for inner peace. Therefore, mind care requires daily attention and conscious choices. Planting faith, hope, and trust in God is an intentional act. This understanding already promotes a great transformation of the mind. Often, without realizing it, the person waters bad thoughts with repeated worries. A practical step is to replace this habit with something constructive, such as listening to a motivational Christian message or reading a Bible passage early in the morning. This type of practice helps to shield the mind and reduces anxiety and fear. Gradually, the renewal of the mind becomes natural. The garden begins to bloom in a healthy way. When you consciously choose what to plant, the Christian mindset is strengthened. It's not about perfection, but about constancy. Small seeds daily generate big changes over time. This spiritual discipline strengthens spiritual strength and brings emotional control. And this prepares us to talk about what most harms this garden: toxic thoughts and self-sabotage. Toxic thoughts are those that seem harmless, but undermine confidence little by little. Internal phrases like "I never get it" or "this is not for me" are silent forms of self-sabotage. These patterns fuel anxiety and fear and weaken faith. Therefore, the care of the mind needs to be intentional and constant. Identifying these thoughts is already a powerful step in transforming the mind. Often, self-sabotage is born of old experiences that still echo in the present. A practical exercise is to question the thought: does this come from God or does it come from fear? This simple analysis helps to shield the mind and strengthens emotional control. Gradually, you learn to overcome bad thoughts before they influence important decisions. This process builds a healthier Christian mindset. When you replace toxic thoughts with spiritual truths, something begins to align within. Trusting in God brings rest in God and inner peace even in the midst of insecurities. Spiritual strength grows as you stop fighting yourself. This advancement prepares the heart to learn to dominate the mind, not to be dominated by it. Mastering the mind does not mean controlling everything you feel, but choosing how to react to what arises. Thoughts come and go, but not all of them deserve attention. When you learn this, emotional control begins to strengthen. This awareness is an essential part of mind transformation and spiritual care. Inner peace grows when the mind ceases to be a constant battlefield. A practical step to mastering the mind is to create breaks throughout the day. Before reacting, Taking a deep breath and praying silently helps to shield the mind. This simple habit reduces impulsivity and decreases anxiety and fear. Gradually, you realize that you don't have to obey every thought that comes your way. This strengthens the Christian mindset and spiritual strength. When you take responsibility for your own thoughts, faith becomes more mature. Trusting God now includes trusting that He helps you deal with the mind. This daily practice brings rest in God and promotes renewal of the mind. Mastering the mind prepares the heart to discern where certain thoughts come from. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Not every thought that arises in the mind deserves to be followed, and learning to discern this is spiritual maturity. Thoughts that come from God bring direction, correction with love, and inner peace, even when they confront. Anxiety and fear, on the other hand, press, confuse, and accelerate the heart. This discernment is a fundamental part of the Christian mentality. Without it, the mind becomes an open field for negative thoughts. A simple criterion helps a lot observe the effect of the thought. Whether it breeds despair, constant guilt, or paralysis, probably does not come from God. A practical exercise is to take this thought into prayer and analyze it in the light of the Word. This helps to shield the mind and strengthens emotional control. Gradually, you begin to overcome bad thoughts more clearly. When you learn to discern, trust in God deepens. The transformation of the mind happens because you stop reacting on impulse and start acting with divine wisdom. This brings rest in God and reduces the internal noise caused by anxiety. This skill prepares the heart to also evaluate what you consume daily. And that makes all the difference. Everything you consume daily directly influences your mind and heart. Content, conversations, and environments work like seeds that are planted without you realizing it. When consumption is toxic, negative thoughts multiply and inner peace goes away. Therefore, the care of the mind also involves external choices. Shielding the mind requires attention to what enters through the eyes and ears. A practical step is to evaluate what you have been consuming first thing in the morning and before bed. Excessive news, constant complaints, and fear-laden conversations fuel anxiety and fear. Replacing some of this with a daily biblical reflection, praise, or motivational Christian message already changes the internal climate. These small changes strengthen emotional control and mind renewal. The environment begins to cooperate with your faith. When you choose environments that strengthen faith, the Christian mindset is consolidated. Trusting God is easier when everything around you points to hope and not chaos. Spiritual strength grows, and rest in God becomes more accessible. These choices create a natural filter against bad thoughts. And this leads us to understand how certain emotions, when misconduct, also profoundly affect the mind. Anger is a human emotion, but when it's not taken care of well, it takes over the mind. Impulsiveness makes the person act in the heat of the moment and then deal with guilt, regret, and negative thoughts. This cycle robs you of inner peace and weakens spiritual strength. Therefore, mind care includes learning to pause before reacting. God does not call us to react on impulse, but to act wisely. In practice, mastering anger starts with small attitudes. Taking a deep breath, stepping away for a few minutes, and saying a silent prayer helps to shield the mind. This space between stimulus and response strengthens emotional control and reduces anxiety and fear. Gradually, you realize that you don't have to win arguments but preserve peace. This is also part of trusting in God. When impulsiveness loses ground, the Christian mindset matures. The transformation of the mind happens because you start to choose answers that reflect faith and balance. This brings rest in God and improves relationships. Calmer reactions teach more than 1,000 words. And this self-control is directly reflected in the way we deal with the people closest to us. Emotional responsibility is understanding that what you feel directly influences those around you. In relationships and in the family, words spoken carelessly can generate deep wounds. Therefore, the care of the mind goes hand in hand with the care of bonds. Developing emotional control is a clear expression of love and spiritual maturity. Inner peace begins within and spreads outward. A practical step is to learn to talk about feelings without accusing. Instead of you always doing it, switching to "I feel this way when this happens" completely changes the mood. This posture helps to shield the mind against unnecessary conflicts and reduces anxiety and fear in relationships. Gradually, the Christian mindset is reflected in the way you communicate. Healthy relationships are also part of the transformation of the mind. When you take emotional responsibility, bonds strengthen. Trusting God now includes trusting that He teaches you to love better. This generates rest in God and builds more emotionally safe environments. Spiritual strength manifests itself in the ability to listen, forgive, and adjust routes. And this leads us to understand how personal example speaks louder than any speech. Personal example is one of the most powerful ways to teach, even when no words are spoken. People watch how you react, how you speak, and how you deal with the pressures of everyday life. When the mind is aligned with God, this reflection appears naturally in attitudes. This strengthens the Christian mindset and imparts inner peace effortlessly. Living the faith is often more impactful than explaining it. In practice, this means living what you pray. If you talk about trusting God, but live dominated by anxiety and fear, the message loses force. A simple step is to start silently applying what you learn without having to announce it. This alignment between faith and action helps to shield the mind and promotes transformation of the mind from the inside out. People notice when there is coherence. When example becomes habit, teaching happens naturally. Spiritual strength manifests itself in balanced attitudes, wise words, and calm reactions. This generates rest in God and positively influences those who live with you. The care of the mind becomes visible in daily practice. And this path makes room for something even deeper: the reprogramming of the mentality with divine wisdom. Reprogramming your mindset is not about erasing who you were, but aligning who you are with what God wants to build. For a long time, the mind learns patterns based on fear, scarcity, and self-defense. Divine wisdom comes in precisely to adjust these inner codes. This process strengthens the Christian mindset and promotes a real and consistent transformation of the mind. It is not magic, it is daily practice with God. A practical step for this reprogramming is to observe the internal dialogue. What you repeat to yourself shapes emotions and decisions. Replacing negative phrases with biblical truths or statements of trust in God helps to shield the mind. Daily devotional readings or Christian books on mind and faith are great allies in this process. Gradually, the mind learns a new path. When the mentality begins to be reprogrammed, emotional control is strengthened. Anxiety and fear no longer dominate as before, because the mind begins to recognize God's voice more clearly. This generates rest in God and inner peace even in phases of uncertainty. Spiritual strength grows as the mind aligns with the truth. And this leads us to understand that this transformation does not happen all at once. The transformation of the mind does not happen in a single moment. It is built day after day. Romans 122 reminds us that we are not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of the mind. This shows that true change is an ongoing process. Every choice, every corrected thought, every sincere prayer is part of this path. The Christian mentality is strengthened in constancy. In practice, this means reviewing the mind every day, as if doing daily maintenance. Ask yourself, does what I'm thinking reflect faith or fear? This simple habit helps to shield the mind and reduce anxiety and fear. The renewal of the mind happens when you decide to align thoughts with God's truth. Gradually, the care of the mind becomes natural. When you understand that transformation is daily, the guilt for not being ready loses strength. Trusting God comes to include trusting in the process. This brings rest in God and strengthens spiritual strength. Inner peace grows as you walk, not when you arrive. And this daily walk leads us to a very important choice: consciously choosing peace. Inner peace is not just a feeling, it is a conscious choice made every day. In the midst of pressures, noises, and demands, you decide where you will put the focus of your mind. When you choose to trust God, even without immediate answers, something calms down inside. This decision protects against anxiety and fear and strengthens emotional control. Peace does not happen by chance, it is cultivated. In practice, choosing peace means saying no to certain thoughts and reactions. Not every argument needs to be won, nor does every concern need to be fed. A simple step is to stop the excess of stimuli and separate moments of silence with God. This helps to shield the mind and promotes mind renewal. Small daily choices build a more balanced heart. When peace becomes a priority, the Christian mentality matures. Spiritual strength grows because you learn to rest in God instead of fighting everything. This posture brings clarity, wisdom, and emotional stability. The transformation of the mind is revealed in calm and firm attitudes. And this balance prepares the heart to end the day in the best possible way in prayer. Prayer is not just a request. It is a resting place for the weary mind. When you pray, you surrender to God what you cannot control alone. This simple act reduces anxiety and fear and brings a real sense of relief. Inner peace does not come because everything has been resolved, but because you have chosen to trust God. To pray is to turn off external noise and reorganize the interior. A very effective practice is to say a short prayer before bed or when you wake up, focused on confidence and calm. It doesn't have to be long or full of difficult words. It needs to be sincere. Saying something like, "Lord, take care of my mind today," already helps to shield the mind. This habit strengthens emotional control and promotes mind renewal. Over time, the heart learns to rest in God naturally. When prayer becomes part of the routine, spiritual strength grows consistently. You start to end the day with less weight and start the next one with more clarity. The Christian mentality is strengthened in this place of daily surrender. Overcoming bad thoughts is easier when the mind learns where to rest. And so, each day ends by preparing the heart for a new beginning with God. After everything we have reflected on here, the question that remains is simple but profound: what are you going to do with what goes through your mind every day? Will you continue to feed fear, anxiety, and negative thoughts, or will you choose to start over with God? Take care of your mind and trust that He is in control. The transformation of the mind begins with small but conscious decisions made every day. How about choosing peace today even without all the answers? How about practicing daily gratitude, surrendering your thoughts in prayer, and resting in God before reacting? Faith for difficult days is not born from the absence of problems, but from the presence of God in the midst of them. When you shield the mind and strengthen the Christian mindset, life begins to gain another rhythm, lighter and more aligned. If this message spoke to you, put it into practice today. And to continue walking together in this process of faith, reflection, and spiritual growth, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Here there will always be a motivational Christian message to remind you to get up, not give up, and trust that God continues to take care of you.